All right. It is noon and we are recording.
Crystal, you like me to get started?
Sure. I think we have on the call so far with us, it doesn't look like we've got any businesses as of yet, but we do have Courtney Curatolo and Mark Geis. So real quick, I just want to thank you guys for all of everything that you've done since the beginning of this. We haven't, recreated the wheel in any way here with this webinar. You guys have given us a lot of really great information. Seth has brought a lot of great information to this, putting this presentation together, and it's just been really great to work with you all. And I want to just, since it's just us, thank you very much for all of your leadership and giving us all the tools that we need. So we're appreciative.
Welcome. Thank you for having this seminar and being such a good partner with this and everything else we're working on. Appreciate it.
It's good stuff. So with that, for the purposes of recording this session, I'll just real quickly introduce myself. My name is Crystal Sertic. I'm the Director of Development for the City of Jamestown. As we mentioned, we've got some really great partners that we've been working with. We've got CCIDA, Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency, the Chautauqua County Chamber of Commerce, and the Small Business Development Center located at JCC. All the folks in each of those agencies has really been great partners to work with and have provided a ton of resources for all of our businesses locally here. So with that, I will pass things over to our presenter, Seth Picarillo. And if you want to introduce yourself, Seth.
Hello, everyone. My name is Seth Picarillo. I'm working as a consultant with the Jamestown Department of Development, and excited to talk about the phase reopening for New York State businesses and how that impacts specifically the retail sector. This presentation has live links in it, so feel free to share it with other businesses that might find it useful. We have some best practices, and then most importantly, we have detailed guidance on what happens next. Before we start to get into the guidance, there are some newly announced assistance and best practices websites to take a look at. Just today, which is May 26th, New York State announced the New York Forward Loan Fund. The application link is included in this presentation. It is designed specifically for small businesses that have not received US SBA assistance or loans yet, and it's worth taking a look at. The US SBA continues to have programs for financial assistance, but also really good best practices about the weeks and months to come. The same with the US Chamber of Commerce that has ongoing guidance, and specifically to this group, the National Restaurant Association has some very smart best practices for reopening for restaurants, which will be complicated. OSHA also has good summaries of best practices for retail and restaurants. Some of those, and really most of those guidelines are echoed in the state guidance that we'll talk about, but OSHA's website is valuable and worth taking a look at for any small business. So phase one is open, which creates questions. So now what? What are our next steps as business owners? While there's going to be questions and gray areas and needs for clarification, there are a few very clear next steps. Business owner needs to complete their business safety plan, which we'll discuss in detail. They must affirm their business compliance with New York Forward's reopening guidance, which we'll also talk about. And number 3 and number 4 are about making sure that those first 2 points are successful. Review the plan with your employees. Communication is key on safety plans, and make that plan accessible to your customers. That's a requirement from New York State. But beyond that, in order for customers, whether it be pick up retail or when they eventually enter into your doors, Their feeling of comfort that you are taking every safety precaution necessary is going to drive business. So as I said, there's going to be gray area, there's going to be questions, but that business safety plan and that affirmation submitted to the state, those are clear and they're necessities. Forward.ny.gov includes industry-specific guidance. So each phase and each type of industry has very clear general needs, but then also best practices that are specific to the industry. The restaurant and retail have the most best practices, of which we're going to go over in a moment. So there's also the business safety template and the affirmation link. The template is a writable PDF that we suggest everyone uses. It's exactly what the state is looking for, and it's a tool that should be used. The guidance on that website is divided into summary guidance. Those are things that apply to all businesses. Detailed guidelines that apply specifically to the sector that you're in, and then that business safety template. All of these precautions and guidelines are about building employee trust and customer confidence. Enforcement of these guidelines from the state and local municipality are not necessarily clear right now. There'll be more guidance to come. But it's safe to assume that if there was going to be an issue or a complaint, it's going to be from an employee or a customer. So while there's so much that you can't control, making sure that you're doing everything with your team to build trust in your safety guidelines and also confidence with your customers that you are doing everything that you can is the best way forward. I'm going to go over the phases and the criteria. I know usually in a PowerPoint, you don't want to just be looking at a lot of text, but the detailed text in this situation are what matters most. So what is phase one that's already reopened? That's construction, agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. Retail, which we're going to talk about today, that's limited to curbside or in-store pickup or drop-off. Manufacturing and wholesale trade. What does retail trade mean as part of phase one? That's delivery and curbside in-store pickup services for the following: clothing, direct selling, electronics and appliances, electronic shopping and mail order houses, furniture and home furnishing stores, florist, general merchandise stores, health and personal care stores, jewelry, luggage, and leather goods stores, lawn and garden equipment and supplies, office supplies, stationery and gifts, used merchandise, shoe stores, sporting goods, hobby, musical instruments and bookstores, and other miscellaneous retail stores. Phase one construction is building equipment, building finishing, foundation structure, highway, street, and bridge construction, land subdivision, non-residential and residential construction, and utility systems. Phase one manufacturing I won't go over, but you see here, it's a broad category list of who's applicable. Phase one agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting, the same. What is phase two, which is critical to the people that are going to be looking at this? Professional services, retail, meaning not just pick up and drop off, meaning people going in as customers and shopping. Administrative support, real estate, rental, and leasing. A question that we are hearing is, what is going to be the gap between phase one and phase two? That does depend on the regional metrics set forth by the state, but we're also hearing that it's at least a 2-week period between phase one and phase two. And that, as of today, May 16th, that 2-week period for reopening for phase two has not been announced yet. So as of right now, we're still at least looking at 2 weeks. Phase three is restaurants and food services. Again, not just pickup and delivery, but customers going inside. And phase four is arts, entertainment, recreation, and education. Whether or not you've been doing pickup and drop off or delivery or operating any business for the last 2 months, the reopening guidelines apply to both essential businesses and businesses that were closed. So you need to have that business safety plan and affirmation regardless of if you're opening in 2 weeks or whenever phase two is announced, or if you're going to be operating now. It's always good to have specific safety protocols for your business. You know your business best. You know what you need to do to stay safe, and that's always encouraged. You can exceed the state guidance in this situation for COVID-19, but you must meet it. I'm going to go over what's mandatory and what's recommended for best practices. This is all on the website that we mentioned. And this is going to be what you're affirming, understanding, and having a plan about. Again, it's details, and forgive my reading, but it's something that you should take a look at as you are creating and affirming your plan. Physical distancing. Assure 6 feet of distance between personnel unless safety or core function of work activities require a shorter distance. For any work occurring indoors, limit workforce presence to no more than 1 worker per 250 square feet. Understanding that's going to be difficult for restaurants. Excluding supervisors in this calculation unless additional personal protective measures are implemented. Things like face coverings. Reduce bidirectional foot traffic by posting signs and arrows in narrow aisles, hallways, and spaces. Tightly confined spaces like elevators and hoists should be occupied by only 1 individual at a time unless all occupants are wearing face coverings. If occupied by more than 1 person, keep occupancy under 50% of maximum occupancy. Have employees work from home whenever possible. Post social distance markings using tape or signs that denote 6 feet of spacing in commonly used and other applicable areas at the site. Those markings are specifically important for restaurants and retail operations. Prohibit non-essential visitors on the site. Limit in-person gatherings as much as possible using tele or video conferencing whenever possible. Protective equipment. Employers must provide employees with acceptable face coverings at no cost to the employee and have an adequate supply of coverings in case of replacement. Acceptable face coverings include, but are not limited to, cloth, that could be homemade, sewn, quick cut, bandana, surgical masks, unless the nature of the work requires a stricter PPE. The most common we're seeing is the N95 or face shield. Face coverings must be cleaned and replaced after use or when damaged or soiled, may not be shared, and should be properly stored or discarded. Limit sharing of objects, tools, machinery, materials, vehicles, and discourage touching of shared surfaces, specifically for retailers, things like point of sale, or when in contact with shared objects or frequently touched areas, wear gloves, trade appropriate or medical, or sanitize or wash hands before and after contact. A lesson can be learned from the places like grocery stores that have been operating throughout the last 2 months. At point of sales, they have they clean the point of sale after use, even in a big grocery store, because obviously there's certain situations where there's going to be reuse of equipment like a keypad. Other places have covered that keypad with a protective film that they change. There are some options. None of them are mandated, but what they're looking for is a plan to address those areas. Cleaning and hygiene. Adhere to hygiene and sanitation requirements from the CDC and the Department of Health and maintain cleaning logs on site that document date, time, and scope of cleaning. This one is important because it's something that can be done in any place. It's something that you can document that you are addressing cleaning in specific areas, especially high traffic, shared use areas. Whenever possible, increase ventilation of outdoor air, opening windows and doors while maintaining safety precautions. Provide and maintain hand hygiene stations for personnel, including hand washing with soap, water, and paper towels, as well as an alcohol-based hand sanitizer containing 60% or more of alcohol for areas where hand washing is not feasible. You'll see that same piece of guidance echoed in OSHA as well. Encourage employees to bring lunch from home and reserve adequate space for employees to observe social distancing while eating meals. Provide and encourage employees to use cleaning and disinfecting supplies before and after using of shared and frequently touched surfaces, followed by hand hygiene. Conduct regular cleaning and disinfection at least every day, and more frequent cleaning and disinfection of shared objects like tools and surfaces, as well as high transit areas such as restrooms and common areas. Cleaning and disinfecting the site, shared surfaces, and other areas, as well as equipment and tools, should be performed using DEC products identified by the EPA as effective against COVID-19. If cleaning and disinfection products or the act of cleaning and disinfecting causes safety hazard or degrades the material or machinery, personnel should have access to hand hygiene stations between use or be supplied with disposable gloves. Prohibit shared food and beverages among staff, obviously, like ordering in pizza or buffet style meals. Communication. Communication is key, as I said in the beginning, and in all facets of this. Affirm that you have reviewed and understand the state issued industry guidelines and that you will implement them. And that's basically what we're doing here today. Post signage throughout the site to remind personnel to adhere to proper hygiene, social distancing, appropriate use of PPE, and cleaning and disinfecting protocols. Train all personnel on new protocols and frequently community safety guidelines. Establish a communication plan for employees, visitors, and clients with a consistent means to provide updated information. Maintain a continuous log of every person, including workers and visitors, who may have contact with other individuals at the work site, excluding deliveries that are performed with appropriate PPE or through contactless means. That log is going to be difficult for retailers, but having a plan that is at least feasible for you moving forward is something that should be included in your business safety plan. If workers test positive for COVID, employer must immediately notify state and local health departments and cooperate with contact tracing efforts, including notification of potential clients, such as workers or visitors who have had close contact with the individual, while maintaining confidentiality required by state and federal law regulations. There's a real world example of this going on right now in Missouri. It was found out that a hairdresser is COVID positive. So now what her business and what state officials are trying to do is, who did that person have contact with? So what we hope in that situation is that she has an appointment log that she can then look to say, here's who I have contacted in this period. And then finally, conspicuously post completed safety plan on site. We're going to talk about this more, but this safety plan that you're going to draft, you want to make sure that you review with your employees, that you have available to customers, and that you have a sign in my recommendation somewhere in the site that says we have a completed business safety plan. Screening. Employees who are sick should stay home or return home if they become ill at work. There's going to be a lot of conversation in the next couple of weeks about temperature screening at facilities. The best screening that can happen is at home. So if someone is feeling sick, they should take their temperature at home. And the definition of a high temp by CDC is 100.4. If that can happen at home and not in your business, that is the better option. Perform screening remotely, that's telephone or electronic survey, before reporting to site to the extent possible. Implement mandatory health screening assessment that could be questionnaire, temperature check before employees begin work each day, and for essential visitors asking about COVID-related symptoms for the last 14 days, positive COVID tests in the past 14 days, or close contact with confirmed or suspected COVID-19 cases in the past 14 days. Assessment responses must be reviewed every day, and such review must be documented. Employees who present with no symptoms but who have tested positive in the past 14 days may only return to work after completing a 14-day quarantine. Employees who have had close contact with a confirmed or suspected person with COVID-19 but are not experiencing any symptoms should inform their employer and may be able to work with additional precautions, including regular monitoring for symptoms and temperature, requiring face coverings at all times, and appropriate social distancing from others. That's going to be difficult in a retail or restaurant situation. So based on these guidelines, my advisement is that you do not want to have someone who has been recently tested positive for COVID working in a small retail or restaurant space. On-site screeners should be trained employees identified familiar with CDC, DOH, and OSHA protocols, and be wearing appropriate PPE when they are administering a screening. So these are the best practices that are being put forth by the state. They're that right-hand column of the website that I screenshotted. Create additional space for employees by limiting in-person presence to only personnel necessary for the current task. Adjust retail hours to spread employee and customer traffic over a longer period of time, staggering arrivals and departure times, creating A and B teams. This A and B team concept is important because that also makes it easier if people are specifically designated in a specific team. Things like contact tracing become much easier. Anytime personnel are less than 6 feet apart from one another or customer and without physical barrier, like plexiglass, personnel must wear acceptable face coverings. You're seeing that already in places that are doing takeout. That could be as simple as a face mask. You would hope that your customer is also wearing a face mask. And an important note is, if you, as a business owner, you can require a customer to be wearing a face mask in order to be served. Stagger customer arrivals by advising pickup time windows and avoid direct handoffs. Designate and arrange customer waiting areas, lines, and parking areas to maximize social distancing and implement a touchless delivery system whereby customers stay in the car while the delivery takes place. Encourage customers to use touchless payment options or pay ahead. Establish designated areas for pickup and deliveries, limiting contact to the extent possible, and prohibit non-essential visitors at a retail location. Paying ahead is the easiest way to do this, especially if you are a restaurant. If you're doing pickup, try to do as much of that transaction on the phone. Things like tips, everything can be done by phone with a credit card, and we're seeing that as a successful, accessible way to approach this. Prepare a plan for receipt and resale of returned merchandise or modified policies to ensure safety of employees and customers. Whenever possible, increase ventilation of outdoor air, again, the opening windows and doors while maintaining safety protocols. And again, encourage employees to bring lunch from home and to reserve adequate space for employees to observe social distancing while eating. Use social media, verbal communication, and sites to provide customers with instructions for ordering and pickup, and to encourage them to use face coverings when 6 feet of distance cannot be maintained in accordance with the CDC and DOH. Perform screenings remotely. Again, that's by phone if possible, before reporting to any retail location to the extent possible. Encourage, but do not require customers to complete a health screen and provide contact information so that they can be logged and contacted for contact tracing if necessary. That would be difficult to do. So if you're looking at all of the other safety precautions, if you're meeting those, that would probably, I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of a business owner, would be easier than doing any type of preliminary contact tracing. So everything that I just discussed is in the interim guidance for each individual sector. This one is construction, but each individual sector has their own. And we've just gone through the entire retail sector. What you have to do after reading that, even before doing your business plan, is to affirm that you have read and understand your obligation to operate in accordance with that guidance. The business safety plan is not directly submitted to the state. That is something that you need to have on your premises and talk to your employees about. But this affirmation is sent to the state, and it is something that they could track. So if we are weeks from now and they're noticing businesses in Jamestown that have not affirmed, that's something that they can look into. Right now, as the guidance is set up, the local area of jurisdiction for these new rules is the local municipality. But especially in the retail space, State Liquor Authority, Department of Health, Department of Labor, and the Attorney General's office are all able to respond to complaint or have some jurisdiction over their part of these types of businesses. So it's really necessary, and we can't hammer enough that you need to get that affirmation done as quickly as possible. That's what it looks like. You're basically giving your contact information. You're showing what industry you're from. You're giving basic contact information, and then you are submitting. So that's the affirmation. The safety plan template is just another format for the same information that we just went over. They're asking you to understand the guidelines and then put forth a plan for your specific business. And it's set up as a fillable PDF. You are, again, testing that you understand this. This is our plan. There are text boxes for you to get specific about your business. We're going to share the Department of Development's email address at the end of this. If you have questions about how to fill this out, we are here to help with that. But this is something that you might as well use this format because the state has given it to you. You don't have to, but our advisement would be specific as possible and use the format that the state is putting out. As I said, currently that safety plan is not submitted in full for state review, but the affirmation is. But in many ways, that business safety plan is what your employees and your customers are going to see. So that makes that document just as important as the affirmation that you're sending to the state. So our next steps in retail or any sector: complete your business safety plan, file a readily accessible copy of your plan in your business. If you have delivery vehicles, I would have a plan in the delivery vehicle as well. You can't control that everyone is following these rules at every moment. If someone drops a mask down and is not, their supervisor doesn't see that, you can't control every minute, but you can show that you're making every effort to make sure that these rules get followed. Post a public copy of the plan in your business, and then schedule meetings to discuss this plan with your employees. Not just once, create opportunities for communication, even if it's hard to get everybody, obviously with social distancing, in the same room. Set up a text chain. It's about making sure that your team knows what's happening, that you are trying to keep them safe, and also protecting yourself from employer liability. Make sure that you can say, we have made every effort to make sure that our employees and our customers know what our safety protocols are. This is just a recommendation because there's going to be more guidance and more COVID-related information coming out for months and years to come. Assign a COVID-19 response point person, someone that is in charge of knowing where the plan is if someone asks for it, to inform customers about what that plan is. Not every employee is going to know about the full extent of this, but you don't want, when a customer asks a question about it, you don't want the answer to be like, I don't know. Have there be someone, even if they're not at the site at that point, that is the point person for those types of questions or inquiries. Keep communicating with employees, and then as you're going into this, develop protocols in addition to the guidance that best fit your business. The traditional retail space and restaurant space is not coming back, at least until they find a vaccine, or we don't think that's going to be in the short-term future. So you're going to find things that work best for your business. I would write those down, because as new employees come on board, you're going to have to, in addition to train them on how to provide the service that your business provides, you're going to have to teach them about safety protocol. So I want to get into question and answer, but again, we want to thank our partners, the Chautauqua County IDA, the Chautauqua County Chamber of Commerce, the Jamestown Small Business Development Center. And here's our email address for any questions, and if we can be of assistance to anyone as they're going through the business safety plan process. Anything we want to talk about in greater detail?
Seth, I have a question. Would you recommend that businesses who are not to be open until phase 2 also go through this process now?
I would, I think. So let's just hypothetically, and I don't know this to be the timeline, but if by Friday of this week, they say, okay, there's 2 weeks now, phase 2 opens. I think it would make sense, if you're getting ready to open, to do the business plan now. And if there is more that needs to be changed afterwards, I would just make sure that if you're preparing to reopen, that you have the affirmation and the business plan done.
Thank you.
Hey, Seth, I guess we don't really know what that affirmation will look like, whether it'll be the same or different, or probably be the same, but certainly the business template might be different, I would think, the safety template. But certainly businesses should at least be going in there and looking around and printing it out and getting ready, right? At the bare minimum, so that when they give the green light, they're one step ahead.
Agreed. And even if, as you start to see news coming out of the governor's daily press briefings, there's an acceleration is happening. Even things on the back end like recreation, for instance, professional sports teams can now start their training camps, things that have direct physical contact. I think things will start to move quicker in the next couple of weeks, that we'll get news about phase 2 reopening soon. And then I think the gap between phase 2 and phase 3 will also be quicker. I think they're trying to get to retail full opening as safely as possible, because they know that's the sector that's hardest hit. What's difficult is things that you saw around the country this weekend from other states. You had large gatherings at restaurants and bars. So I think they're trying to prevent that from happening as much as they can. At the end of the day, it's going to be up to the business owners to be the ones that responsibly administer these safety protocols. But I know that based on what we're hearing, the state wants to get to retail as responsibly and quickly as possible.
Makes sense. So just to mention to anyone who is watching this webinar, on the New York the Forward New York website, and that's in the links provided in this presentation. It goes through in great detail summary guidelines for each phase and for each industry sector. So when we get to our next webinar, our next part of this webinar series, that will be when phase 2 starts. So there's some things that will be generally the same, but then as those new industry sectors start to open, we encourage everyone to go to that website as soon as phase 2 is allowed to start and view those summary guidelines. And then that's where you also will do that, read and affirm the detailed guidelines and print your business safety plan template. So, as we put together the next part of this series, that's, essentially the same place that will receive those guidelines, and we'll address those in phase 2. So I just wanted to add that.
And I would say too, if there's any restaurants on the call or reviewing this, take a look at the National Restaurant Association, because anytime you can look at specific best practices is helpful. And I think obviously food service is going to be complicated. So looking at those types of organizations on a consistent basis would be helpful.
Great. If there are no,
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, if there's no more questions, we'll end it here. And this will be posted on the city's website under our Restart Jamestown link on our homepage. And we'll get this up here in the next, later today, and it'll be available. So thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Bye.
Bye-bye.